Okay, so a while back, and I do mean a while back, I reviewed the first Iron Man movie tie-in video game made for the PlayStation 2. And you could check out that video if you want. I'll leave a link down in the description below. It's really rough. It's one of my earlier videos when I didn't have a decent camera or even a decent microphone. But it's one of the only few reviews online for the PlayStation 2 version of Iron Man, so it actually is one of my better performing videos. And yeah, when you look at the 2,000 or so views on it, that's not well performing at all, man. But trust me, for some of my videos, it's pretty solid performance. Moving on, so you may be asking yourself, dude, you've already reviewed the Iron Man video game. Why are you reviewing it again? Well, for starters, I was already going to review it again because I have the next-gen version of Iron Man. Well, technically it's not next-gen, but when you're looking at the PS2 version, and then there's a Xbox 360 version, obviously that would be the next-gen or newer-gen version of the game out there that I do have to review because it's practically a different game. And in my travels, I came across a PsP version of Iron Man, the game. And so I thought, you know, I'll play around with this, and actually, there was kind of enough stuff there to warrant another video. So, yeah, let's get into the review of Iron Man on the PlayStation Portable. So real quick for starters, it's kind of important to know the history of these games, kind of how they came to be. So back in the early 2000s, late 2000s, 2010s, there was a ton, and I do mean a metric ton, of movie tie-in video games. And the general consensus from many people is that they all suck. I personally have had some fond memories with some of the movie tie-in video games that came out at that time. So I actually give movie tie-in video games the benefit of the doubt usually when I try them out, because every now and then you get a surprise. It's like, yeah, that was a lot of fun. It wasn't perfect, but it was kind of a diamond in the rough. And I kind of had a similar experience with the first Iron Man game, simply because I am a huge Iron Man fan. But I was very clear in that review, look, if you're not into Iron Man at all, you're not really going to enjoy this game. And when the first Iron Man movie came out, there was a company that was making the tie-in video games, and during that time, you had the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and then you had the Wii. And in their wisdom, they figured, look, we can't not release this for the Wii. It's one of the highest selling consoles of the three consoles. It wound up winning the generation in terms of console sales. And so the studio behind deciding if they were going to make a game or not, they were like, look, we gotta release something on the Wii. So they hired a separate studio to make the Wii version. And since the Wii is comparable in terms of hardware to the PlayStation 2 and the PSP, they figured, look, let's get the most bang for our buck, and let's release this on the PlayStation 2 and the PSP, and surprisingly the PC as well. This is one of the weird, rare times where even though a PC could handle the higher demanding version of the game, they didn't do that. They just regulated the lower version to the PC. And normally when you see a PC version, it's comparable to the Xbox 360 and PS3 depending on the game. But this is one of the weird, rare times where they didn't do that with the PC version. They just flat out put the PC version with the lower end spec game. And so the first one I got was the PC version, because at the time that was all I was playing. And playing the PC version, the PS2 version, and the PsP version, I might actually wind up with a Wii version at some point in the future. I don't know. But there's some differences between the three, believe it or not. So like the PC version, at the start of every level, has a free camera that you can like just 360 move around your Iron Man when he's floating there. And once you move the Iron Man, it locks to behind his shoulder till the end of the level. That wasn't available on the PlayStation 2 version or the PsP version. It's a little thing, but it's worth noting. And then another thing the PC version had over the other two versions is the opening level where you're in the cave suits and you break through the doors. Black Sabbath's Iron Man begins playing. Not on the PS2 or the PsP version. It's crazy. I don't know why. But the PC version has Iron Man from Black Sabbath playing during the opening level. And it's pretty cool. Another thing is, I think the PC version tends to run a little bit better than the PS2 or the PsP version. The PlayStation 2 version has a lot of slowdown during the more heavier, intensive scenes. Same with the PsP version. Another thing the PC version has is you can control your altitude more specifically. In the PS2 or the PsP, they're a little bit limited on buttons, and so it's kind of this weird thing you have to play with. With the PC version, you can like control much better your altitude raising and lowering. So that was kind of cool with it. And then on the PC version, there is a dash ability, and I could not find the dash ability on the PlayStation Portable version to save my life. I just think they didn't add it because the PlayStation Portable version is limited on buttons it has. It has even less buttons than the PlayStation 2 version. And in terms of the PlayStation 2 version, the power management system does fit more nicely with the PS2 version than the PC or the PsP. I mean, it kind of feels like it was designed for the DualShock 2 controller. Now, moving on to the PsP version, which is what this video is all about. The PsP version is actually kind of cool because you're playing Iron Man portably. And you have the power of Iron Man in the palm of your hands. And it's kind of cool being able to fly around shooting bad guys as Iron Man while you're on your way to a trip or sitting on a bus or a train. It's kind of cool. And having Iron Man portably is kind of a dream come true, if I'm being completely honest. Now, yes, it should be noted, if you are not a fan of Iron Man, you're not going to enjoy this game. That hasn't changed. The PsP is very similar to the PS2 and the PC version. So, you have to be a fan of Iron Man to be able to enjoy this. But, surprisingly, it does fit nicely on the smaller screen. The last gen, I'm going to call it the last gen version of Iron Man, was not a looker. Hell, I think in my previous review, I stated that it at best looked like a high-end PS1 game. It does not look that good. And on the smaller screen, it actually looks a lot better than it does playing on a PC screen or a PlayStation 2 screen. So the smaller screen does help in terms of looks. It does feel like a PlayStation Portable game. And if you've played the PS2 version, this one's not going to change your mind. I mean, that just has to be stated. I know I'm probably a little bit more positive than other people on this game, but that's because I'm a fan of Iron Man, and I'll take any type of video game that has Iron Man in it, unless it's like a 2D side-scroller. But like anything where I can actually fly around as Iron Man, yeah, I'm going to go nuts for that. So keep that in mind. I'm a tad biased. Now, funny enough, I just got done saying that the PS2 was not a looker, and it does look a little bit better on the PsP. But keep in mind, the PsP does take a hit in graphics. So the PS2 does have sharper edges and smoother animations and a little bit more textures. PsP doesn't have that. Like, I can't remember if it was the PC or the PS2, but there is kind of a reflective texture on some of the Iron Man suits. You don't get that in the PsP version. They definitely had to cut some corners for this PS1 looking game. Now, again, it does look nicely on the smaller screen, but if you were to like have this hooked up to a larger screen, yeah, this would look pretty rough. Now, one of the big issues I ran into was playing this game on the PsP. It was really rough playing with the controls because the flying controls are on the face button, the triangle, 0, X, and square. I can't explain how terrible of a layout this is. Now, if you're someone who constantly plays PlayStation Portable, you've probably gotten used to the fact that there's only one thumbstick, and you've created some, techniques to be able to handle games with really bad control layouts because there's only one thumbstick. Why did Sony design that? Now, what I was able to do is, since I had this on the PsP, I decided to back up this game to my PlayStation Vita and run it through Adrenaline. And running it through Adrenaline, you actually can change the button layouts, and I was able to set the flying to the second controller stick, and yeah, world of difference. So if you do have a PlayStation Vita, I would recommend buying a copy of Iron Man on the PsP and then creating a backup for your Vita, because look, I don't want you breaking the law or anything, but come on, it runs better on the Vita than the PsP. And also, you can overclock your Vita so that it doesn't have the jittery or the slowdown like it does on the PsP. So, kind of the best way to play this portable version is on the Vita. But you kind of need to know what you're doing though, so it's not something easily accessible, and fair warning, it could be a little difficult trying to get the Iron Man backup done. Hacking a Vita is super easy though. Like, you just go to a website, hit OK, and you're done. Now, something really cool about the PsP version is there's a couple of exclusive things for the PsP version. One is that the PsP version gets exclusive Iron Man suits of armor. Unfortunately, there's no War Machine. No copy of Iron Man 1 had a War Machine suit, which kind of sucks. But it does get 3 exclusive suits that I have not seen on any other version of Iron Man. And one is a reskin of the classic suit known as the gold armor, where basically it's the classic suit but in gold. So that's kind of cool. Then there's a stealth armor. It's basically just a blacked out classic armor. And then they have a Titanium Man suit of armor that you unlock after you complete the entire campaign, and it's pretty cool. You I think in total there's 1 extra suit than the other versions. The other versions have different suits, but in total I think it's like 6, and I think the PsP version has 7. So it's pretty cool playing around with these suits of armor. It's a little unfortunate that you can't unlock them until you completely beat the campaign. 2 of them you can unlock by getting to like the 3rd waypoint and then like the halfway point. But the titanium suit you can unlock until you beat the campaign. And then another neat thing is that the PlayStation Portable version has exclusive mini games, which basically chooses like 3/4 of the maps and have basically like race challenges and shooting challenges on their maps. They're nothing special or amazing, but it is like some extra content you can get if you've played through this game. First time I played this game, I beat it in 1 day. How much of a fan I was of the Iron Man property. And it would have been nice having these missions on other versions of the game, because you can only replay the campaign missions so many times. And then, just real briefly on the story, the cutscenes and dialogue are as terrible as ever. It's the same across all versions of Iron Man, and like, this is the most unlikable version of Tony Stark out there. Like, I don't think there's a bigger dick version of Tony Stark in any of the comic books. He's just insufferable in this game. And I think Robert Downey Jr. even voiced him in this game. But, I mean, yeah, he's just the absolute worst. And, like, they do that stupid thing where they'll take, like, 2 iconic quotes from 2 different parts of the movie and just throw them into one cutscene to save on time. It just is the lamest, cheapest effort put into the story of this campaign. But that's not why we go to it. We go to it to be able to fly around like Iron Man. So in the end, I would say, is this like the best version of the last gen week report for the first Iron Man game? Yeah, probably, because of the extra modes and stuff you can do. But the controls do take a hit, the graphics do take a hit, and I mean, there is slowdown I've seen. And so if you're an Iron Man fan and you have a PlayStation Portable, only get this if you are proficient at adapting to really bad controls. If you don't play the PlayStation Portable that often, and you have this game and you also have a Vita, I would recommend getting a backup for the Vita. But again, for the third time, you have to be an Iron Man fan to be able to enjoy this. If not, you're not going to like this. So anyway, that's been my review of Iron Man on the PlayStation Portable. My name's Christopher Cobb, 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.